everyone. I'm Abigail. This is Megan. And welcome to another Two Kids interview.
We're joined by author Daphne Benedis-Grab.
Some of her books include I Will Find You, I Know You're Lying, I Know Your Secrets,
Army Brats, alive and well in Prague, New York.
The Girl in the Wall, and more.
Thank you so much for being with us today.
It is my pleasure. I'm very excited to be here.
How are your books influenced by your own childhood?
That is a great question. And I think my books are very influenced by experiences that I had, but even more so by the feelings that I had when I was young. Experiences. I can give you an example. In Alive and Well in Prague, New York, the main character moves from the city to a small town in upstate New York, and she is out for a walk and she gets chased by a goose. I don't know if you guys have ever been chased by a goose, but I have. That's why it's in the book. It is surprisingly crazy terrifying. So I thought it would be a funny thing to put in the book, and anyone who has had the experience of being chased by a goose will be like, yeah, that's actually really scary. So that's just one of like many examples. Another thing that you'll find in almost all my books is scenes where the characters are eating, particularly sweet things, cookies, donuts, scones. That is because I love sweet things. But more than that, my books are very much influenced by feelings that I had when I was younger that I'm very much in touch with now. And, it's not like they've changed all that much, although things soften. And evolve a little bit with brain development, like there's more of an intensity when a person is a little bit younger. And so I definitely tap into a lot of those feelings when I am writing, remembering how I felt when I was 10, 11, 12. Interestingly, it's often easier to remember negative things, like times that I felt really embarrassed or ashamed about something, times when I felt really sad. Definitely times when I felt very angry, but also times of joy and connecting with people.
Did you write a lot as a child?
I did. I wrote mostly in a journal, and then any creative writing that I did was almost always done in school, in class. It wasn't until I was an adult that I started to really write fiction for pleasure. But when I was young, I kept a journal and I wrote in it a lot. And I really liked that. I liked the feeling of kind of a safe place to just dump anything that I was thinking about or feeling or, wrestling with things in my life that I didn't understand. And to be honest with you, writing fiction isn't so different from that. Anytime I write a book, there are issues in the book that I'm wrangling with now in my adult life. Like kind of that line of, when does it go from being mean to actually being a bully or to being an abusive situation? Things like that are things that I think about in my life now, and they will show up in my books. Also, just how important human connection is, that I think loving people and understanding people and offering people a little bit of grace when they make a mistake, those things also always show up.
You write both middle grade and young adult books. Do you have to be in a different mindset when you are writing one versus the other?
Yes, I definitely do. My younger self, 10, is what I usually tap into when I write my middle grade. Even though sometimes my characters are 11 and 12, for some reason 10 deeply resonates with me. I was open to things and just starting to discover like all these things that felt kind of soft and easy when I was younger had harder edges. That was the time when like sometimes people, friends just started being mean to each other and popularity started to matter a little bit more. There were just the beginnings of these edges, but I still had an open mindset. And so that's what I like to write from when I write middle grade books. Teens are much more cynical because like you've been banged around by those edges. They're a little bit harsher when you're younger. People get a little bit kinder as they get older. So when I was a teenager, I was much more cynical and, just quick to see the worst in anything. So that's the mindset that I'll be in when I write teen books a little bit more. So it's probably not a surprise that I write more middle grade because that's a nice mindset to be in.
How do you come up with the ideas for your books?
That's a fun question. So I started recently writing thrillers. The first one was called I Know Your Secret. You mentioned it already, of course. And I started writing it because I love to read thrillers, and I thought it would be so fun to write one. And it was really hard too. It was very challenging. But once I decided that I wanted to write a thriller mystery, I had to think of the, like the trigger point, what would happen. And I brainstorm a lot. Sometimes I talk with friends about things, writer friends, sometimes just when I'm walking or when I'm cooking dinner or when I'm on the subway going somewhere, I'm just thinking, what would be a really good kickoff event? I come up with a lot of ideas. Not all of them are good. And so the first thing I have to do when I have an idea is see if it has legs. So, for example, the book behind you guys, I Know You're Lying, that book, I came up with the premise of 4 students are accused of doing something and there's camera evidence, but none of them did it. So like what happened? Like if the cameras only saw the 4 of them in the vicinity of the scene of the crime and none of them did it, what could be the reason, what could be behind that? So that was the premise that I came up with. And so then I had to really think about the what happened and see if the idea I came up with was enough to take me through 200 pages of writing, or if it was something that would just take 5 pages to write and then it would be over. That'd be a good short story, but not a good book. So yeah, it's brainstorming and then seeing it if an idea has legs, if it can go somewhere.
What is your process when putting a book together?
Do you decide the end before the middle?
Or do you put it together in order?
Ooh, that's a really fun question. Every writer gets to discover her own process and what works for her. For me, I write from an outline and I write my stories in order. So, but I have friends who will like write a scene that's like going to be 3/4 of the way through, and then they write the first scene and they, hop back and forth, or they just sit down and they write. And the next day they're like, oh, I'm going to see where this is going today. They don't have a plan, but I like to be in control of things. So I always have a plan and an outline. I start at the beginning. And sometimes I'll even, once I've decided that it has legs, I will sit down and I'll write the first couple of scenes for the outline. I don't write them out. I just write notes for each one. And then I start going a little bit further and I write like a sentence or two for what I envision to be each chapter. Particularly in a thriller, each chapter needs to be very tight and it always needs to end on some kind of cliffhanger that's going to keep the reader turning pages. So I'm always thinking about that when I create my outlines. I always have to know the end because otherwise I'll just back myself into a corner and I'll be like, I don't know what to do here. Like, this is a mess. There's no solution. So I have to know exactly where it's going before I even sit down and do my outline. And then once I have an outline that I feel pretty good about, I start writing. And as I write, I discover things that kind of deepen the story, or I come up with like new clue ideas or new elements of a character. And when I discover something like that, I actually stop writing, just pages. I stop writing the first draft and I go back and I put it all in my outline. So my outline kind of gets bigger and bigger as I go. So that's my process.
Writing isn't easy, and rejection seems to be a part of most writers' story. Was that part of your journey at all?
Boy, was it. And it still is. I still write books and my agent or editor will say, no, thank you. And then I just have to figure out something else. At this point, I don't write the whole book anymore. I just write like a 2-page synopsis, like, here's my idea. And they'd be like, yeah, no. Nice try, Daphne. And then I just have to come up with something else. And it's tough because I told you all the thinking I have to do. I have to do all of that thinking before I can even tell them the idea. So yeah, like there are just so many books that are like in teensy little pieces on my computer that will never be seeing the light of day.
Tell us about a time when you were doing something and noticed someone or something and thought, I need to put that in a book.
Oh, that's so funny. That happens to me a lot. So I actually just moved from New York City to Boulder, Colorado. So this particular thing that I'm about to tell you is something I'm not going to be able to do anymore. I'm going to be in a little bit of trouble without it. When I went to work, I had a part-time job as a school librarian, which I loved very, very much. And I would take the subway an hour each way every day. I cannot tell you the amazing opportunities for eavesdropping on the subway. I learn all kinds of new slang. I see all kinds of things because everybody, and I do this too when I'm on the subway, you're just kind of in your own world. You're like, you know what? I'm going to work. It's like you act like you would act in your car. You're not as aware of other people. So people have really, really interesting conversations, or they do interesting things, or they're watching interesting things, or sometimes they're gross. I saw someone cutting their nails once. I was like, come on, no one wants your dirty nails on the subway where we're going to be sitting. That is just yucky. That didn't make it into a book. That was too yucky. But yes, snippets of conversation and slang that I learn make it into books all the time. Ooh, another thing is clothes, because, I'm a 50-year-old woman. I don't know that much about how like 10, 11, and 12-year-olds dress. So I'm always taking internal notes when I'm on the subway observing.
When somebody reads one of your books, what do you hope they will get out of it?
So there's certain themes that I think are in every one of my books. And probably the one that I think about and care about, maybe not the most, but an awful lot, is the idea that we all have a story, right? We're all shaped by the experiences that we have. Some of them are very big experiences, but some of them are smaller experiences, but they inform us, and they inform how we act, and they inform what we do, and they inform what makes us angry or sad or scared. And no one's going to know that, right? No one knows your story until they start to get to know you. So I think one of the things that all of us do is someone does something and we immediately jump to a conclusion about it. We make an assumption. Oh, they're rude. Oh, they're a jerk. Oh, they're small-minded, whatever. And one of the things that I try to lift up in my books all the time is you don't know. Like, you don't know what someone's story is. You don't know what happened to them 10 minutes ago that might be making them act this way. If someone is cruel to you, never okay. But if someone's just annoying or weird or is doing something that you kind of want to dismiss, maybe it's taking a minute and understanding that everybody has a story. Another piece of that is that we all have different brains. Like even in my own family too, like my immediate family, my big family, we have a lot, but my son and I are both neurotypical, and my husband and my daughter are neurodiverse. And so sometimes when we're having a conversation, my daughter or my son will do, or my daughter or my husband will do something, and I'm like, you're not listening. That's my assumption, right? Their brains are going a different way. They have a different story going on. So one of the most challenging and important things we do when we communicate with each other is we just try to understand a little bit better where the other person is coming from.
What writer has had the most influence on you?
So I'm going to bring up one from my childhood just because her books were so amazing and huge for me. And that is Beverly Cleary. I remember in third grade, I had this teacher, Miss Smith. She was very strict, and she yelled at us a lot. She had short red hair, and she one day, just like out of the blue, started reading to us Ramona the Pest. And she read one chapter a day. And when she closed that book, felt like I might die. Like the book was so good. And Ramona was so relatable. Do you guys know Ramona Quimby at all? Have you read any of the books about her? There are other kids like that now, but she just always got in the biggest scrapes and just had the biggest misunderstandings. She was very dramatic and a little bit silly, but like kind of in the way that we're all silly when we have big feelings. I loved her so much. And so the Ramona books, I mean, it was so hard. Miss Smith would only read one chapter. It took forever to finish that book. It was so good. But then I went home and I said to my parents that I needed more books about Ramona. And so they took me to the library. We had a nice public library in my town. And I would get out Ramona books. I got out Henry Huggins. I got out Ellen Tabbitt's. I didn't like that one quite as much, but it was still pretty good. And The Mouse and the Motorcycle. And then when I got a little bit older, I loved reading some of her, I don't quite call them young adult books now, but it was girls who were 15 and 16. And they were dating. And the part that was really interesting and fun to read, I read these books when I was 10 and 11, was just how mortified they got all the time. And the way that she described it was so funny. There's this one scene where this girl, her name is Jean, she's getting picked up for the first time with her date, Stan. And this is set in the 50s. So Stan has to knock at the door. He has to come in. He has to say hi to her parents. And then they're talking and the cat comes in and Stan says, well, that's a lovely cat that you have. And so, Jane's dad is very pleased. He's like, yes, he's a wonderful cat. So everyone looks at the cat, and the cat immediately sits down on the ground and starts washing his bum. And like Jane just feels like she's going to die because of all the moments for like the cat to choose to clean his bottom of all the body parts. So stuff like that is so great. Like, it's so funny and it's so fun. So that's why I love her books.
What advice do you have for young people who want to write?
We all have a story. We, in fact, all have a lot of stories. Like, I could tell you 5 from like the day that I've had so far. And all those stories are unique. They're unique to me. They're from my perspective. No one else in the entire world has the same perspective that I do. And the same is true of you and any young person and any human who wants to write. Anything that you have to say is unique and special and important and worth saying. The second thing is that writing is easiest if it becomes a habit, if it's something that you do every day. It's like exercise or a push-up. If you just do it every once in a while, you're not going to get any stronger. But if you do it every day, you slowly build up. And so when I'm in a really good groove with my writing, I'm writing every day for at least 2 hours, maybe a little bit more. And I'm writing. I'm not sitting down, not messing around on the internet. I'm actually in my chair typing words in an outline or in a draft or in a revision of a book. Sometimes when we write, we feel like our writing sucks. That is very normal. The key is to keep writing. Don't be like, oh, I'm going to stop for today and see if it's better tomorrow. No, keep writing. Write your bad writing all day long. You're going to go back. You'll look at it tomorrow. You'll edit it. Chances are it's not as bad as you thought. And you just keep going. But the secret is to write every day or as often as you can.
Finally, it's time for Turbo 10.
10 rapid fire questions. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Let's go. Number 1, what is your favorite phrase to use?
Oh, I like words like cuddly. So I'll be like, or make things up like cuddle duck. Really
Number 2, what is one subject you'd love to learn more about?
Mountain climbing.
Number 3, what is your go-to snack food?
Ooh, cereal. I love cereal.
Number 4, what was your favorite book growing up?
I am going to go with Ramona the Pest.
Number 5, if you could teleport somewhere right now, where would you go?
Paris. And I would eat chocolate.
Number 6, if you could have any superpower, what would it be?
Ooh, the ability to fly. That way I could avoid airplanes.
Number 7, what was your favorite cartoon as a kid?
Ooh, you know what I love was this, well, Scooby-Doo, because there's a Daphne in it and she has red hair like me.
Number 8, what's your favorite rainy day activity?
Reading.
Number 9, if you could have any 3 dinner guests, who would they be?
3 dinner guests.
No rules.
That is no rules. Okay. So Beverly Cleary, who we talked about, now that we've talked about her, I want to hear more stories from her. I bet she has a bunch of really good ones. Zora Neale Hurston, who is an author who I love. And the third one is going to be Julia Child, because maybe she'll give me cooking tips and maybe we could cook together and then we'd have a really good meal.
Number 10, what's the best piece of advice you were ever given?
To not be scared to be myself.
Nice job. That was great. Thank you for doing it.
And thank you so much for spending this time with us.
You guys are awesome. Thank you for spending this time with me.